Hello, everybody, and happy 2026. It is the decorating and staging team, Sandra Racz, and myself, JoAnne Lenart-Weary. We're kicking off the new year by offering a year-long series. Each month, we are going to focus on a different topic and take a little deeper dive than we typically can in one event. So each month, there will be a newsletter, blog, social media posts, and a webinar for you that all focus on the same topic. And we are kicking it off with color. What do you think,
Woo!
Sandra?
Well, I love that we're kicking it off with color because let's face it, that's probably the biggest challenge for so many people. I mean, if we had to really rank it, I would say color is the number one challenge. And you'll see as we go through this some of the problems and some of the solutions we're going to help you guys with. But I love it. I love we're kicking it off with color.
All right. So we're going to talk today about vibing behind color. And what is so important for you to understand is the science behind the pretty. And we're going to be talking about that in all of our things because right now, whatever you do, whether it's for your home or a client, it is gut driven. It just feels good to you and you may not know why. And Sandra, both of us have said to our students for years, you have the natural talent, but what you don't have is the understanding of why. Why does the sofa look better over there? Why is this a better color palette? So we want to help you understand the whys, thus the science behind the pretty. Oh, wait a minute, hitting the wrong button here. This is my very first webinar.
About the time we get really confident with working these, something will happen, doggone it.
So Sandra, let's just take a minute before we move on. Why don't you talk to us about how your design knowledge has evolved over the years, and what do you think has made the biggest difference in you having the confidence that you have now as opposed to at the beginning?
I would love to because like JoAnne just said, some of this is instinctive. Like I knew what I liked and I knew that when I picked out colors for clients, it all worked out. However, when I took my very first color class, I remember saying, because one of the questions was, why are you here? And I made the comment, I want to get off strip 19. I feel like my that strip 19, listen, it worked and it was great. And it was one of these, it just kind of worked with every room. If it was a little bit more beige or if it was a little bit more gray, and that was
Mhm.
truly before gray was so hot. But I just thought I want to get off strip 19. And the reason is, yes, I wanted happy clients, but I needed to know more. I needed to understand color more. I needed to understand why I was even picking out 19.
Mhm.
Ironically, the very next client I went to, I'm like, there is that strip 19. But I also learned enough that I could give my clients option. And because then having that science element or being able to defend your selection, I could
Mhm.
say to clients, you may be a little bit more drawn to this one, but let me show you another option and why this works. Because as you'll see as we go through this, those very muted colors you will have to train your eye to see and be able to explain why that muted color is an orange or red violet or whatever it might be. And because the client's not going to be able to see it either because you
Right,
have your
right.
eye trained. So that's kind of how I started out. Just I wanted to know more, mainly for my client and myself. And I have loved how my business has evolved. This week alone, I did 3 color consultations. Um, Mainly, one client wanted the beam color, and
Mhm.
they are having it's an insurance issue. And so they're doing a remodel and they needed a new paint color. So knowing how to pick the right lighter, I'm going to say lighter because that's kind of what we know, a lighter white, one of the whites, but also being able to get that color that's going to complement it on the ceiling. So
Mhm.
that's how I got into it.
understanding those undertones. And I love what you're saying, because I am working with a lady right now who's taken the Confident Color System class, and she bought our extended package. So we're doing our one-on-ones together, and she said, my friend who is an interior decorator says she always uses, and she listed two different whites. And she said, these are the whites she uses all the time. How can she use those whites all the time? I said, she can't. She's doing the client a disservice, but she's comfortable with what's happening with those whites. So in her mind, it's foolproof. So you want to be able to step away when you're making suggestions to your clients. I think this is the right color. I think this is where the sofa can go. You want to be able to say to them, this is the color I would suggest, and let me tell you why. Those are the power words. If you love doing this, but you don't have confidence, let me tell you why, are the power words. If you're on here and you're a homeowner, understanding why will help you to not spend money that you don't want to spend and make color mistakes or design mistakes. So that's our goal. We are the why girls. Let us tell you why. So if you're on this call or watching this, you might have found us on our YouTube channel. You might have dropped in and taken one of our design labs. Maybe you're sitting in on our monthly design boardroom. You probably fall in one of these categories. You're a style seeker. You just love decorating your own house. You have no desire to help anybody else. You just like playing in your own house. And that's a great way to be. You love getting inspired, doing new ideas. Maybe you're more of a space stylist in that you're a little more reserved in your mind. Less is more. But because less is more, mistakes show more because you can't hide them in fluff. Or maybe you're design driven. You have a project going on in your house at all times. You love experimenting. A paint color does not last long because you'll see another color that sparks an interest, but you don't really have the confidence yet to work with clients. Or maybe you're pretty style savvy. You've already spent time with Sandra and I and earned a certification or two or three, or are hoping to do so. So when we share with you, we try to hit every one of these archetypes of designers. Sandra?
Um, I couldn't help but think when you were talking about the style seeker and seeing this Pinterest board, we have a good friend and she called me up and she goes, I want to pick a paint color for my room, but I already know I want Revere Pewter because I saw on Pinterest because that is the most popular color. I'm like, but does it work in your room? So she was a perfect example about the style
Yes.
seeker. She wanted what she thought was the most stylish,
Mm-hmm.
but it did not work in her house. And then I have to chuckle because my daughter actually sent a picture yesterday and she was doing a little space styling just on her coffee table. I'm like, we're going to go back to the drawing board a little bit. But
Yeah.
it's great to experiment. I do love when these space stylists just get in there and try because it kind of does, well, as JoAnne, and if you've been in business or you've been doing this or you're a style savvy in that category, it does charge us up. We do have that
It does.
boost
Yes, yes.
our feeling and our
The
creativity.
the other day it was snowing and blowing here and cold and nasty, and I was working on some of the things for Sandra's website, and I just had a brain block, and I just was feeling frustrated. And so my husband was in the other room watching TV, probably cars going around in a circle because that's what he does a lot of. And I went in and said, can you help me move a cupboard? And he's like, why are we moving a cupboard now in the middle of the day? I'm like, because
In the middle of
I
the
want
race.
to. Yeah. So we moved the cupboard. I rehung a picture. I changed out some botanicals that I had there and put in some tulips. And and then I went back to work, but it unlocked the brain. It made me smile. As I call them, pretty pockets in my room. I had a new, pretty pocket to look at. So it really is very gratifying. So when we talk a little bit about color today, here are the top 4 questions that you need to resolve, whether it is for your own home or for a client's home. So first of all, what is your preferred color vibe? And for those of you that have taken the confident color test or confident color system class before, we teach you how to do a color test on your clients so you can lock into their vibe. You also need to be able to identify problems. What is it that's wrong in this room? And we're going to look at a few examples. And more importantly, what's the solution to that problem? And there again, across the board, we're going to try to give you the whys of each of the things that we are suggesting. So one of the things that's important, and you've heard Sandra and I say it 100 times, you never ask a client or yourself, what is your favorite color? Because that is not a telling answer. If my client says to me, my favorite color is green, well, what green? Is it a bright green? Is it a muted green, or is it a neutralized green? So it's understanding the vibe that a color is going to send to you. Because if I said I want a room that feels warm, cozy, and comfortable, I'm not going to go for brights. In that room, I'm going to feel happy, excited. The intensity of the color is going to change my mindset in there. So understanding your client or your preferred color vibe and your client's preferred color vibe is step number 1 when it comes to selecting color.
I'll share this too. One of my first clients, before I even got there, she goes, I want you to help me pick out, I want this tranquil blue. I want my bedroom to feel like a sanctuary. And I got there and I mean, put a couple exclamation points behind that bright. And it was this neon blue. And I'm like, okay, are you feeling tranquil in here? And she didn't know why she didn't feel tranquil. It was so interesting to me because it was so obvious. I mean, you don't even
Right.
to have had the color class to know that didn't feel tranquil. So it kind of, so by the time we talked it through, yeah, she ended up more in this neutralized and actually in a blue green, but it's being able to kind of even read between the lines with them.
Yes, yes. And, so often, when you're talking to your clients, especially as you begin to understand the whys and really look at a room in all of its elements, when you say to a client, oh, you're really drawn to bright blues. I am. And you start pointing things out, or you're really drawn to circles, or you're really drawn to curves. Most of the time they don't even realize it. And like you say, you pointed it out for her so she could see it. So color, we always think of just the aesthetics of color, what looks pretty in the space. And textbooks will tell us using certain colors evoke certain emotions. But the bottom line is all of us have individual reactions to color because it's not only based on textbook theory, but it's also based on your culture, your uh, personal experiences. I have heard or I have shared before that at one time I was a blue girl. I was blue across the board, and I was in the muted blues everywhere I went. But it was also a time of my life when I was in a bad relationship and things were not well. I still, 40 years later, if I am in a blue room, it makes me feel down. So my reaction to color, blue should be calming and restorative, but for
Right.
me, blue is a negative trigger. So it's the same when they say red is bold, dramatic, it makes you feel edgy. What red is it? What is the color vibe? So we're looking on the screen at 3 different reds, 3 generations of reds. So the first one being very bright, it is going to feel bold, energetic, and the second one being more muted changes the vibe of the room. And then, of course, the neutralized red. And all of that is going to impact our emotional reaction and our physical reaction to color.
I love too in this example. Well, and this is a good one. I can say it here. It's like if you have a client that really likes that bright, everything in the room can't be so bright. Otherwise, it kind of diminishes that spotlight for that.
Hmm.
Like, take, for instance, the cabinets on the left. You've got to almost have that know how to pick out a neutralized version of it to be able to appreciate that pop of color that you
Hmm.
might want in that space for them.
And I think too, again, I've mentioned it before in color seminars, but when we look at those bright colors, they are what I call the diva colors. They say hello. I always liken it to me at 73 getting ready to go somewhere and thinking I look really nice, and then standing next to my 40-year-old
Stop.
daughter or my 25-year-old granddaughter. I am at the neutralized stage of my life. Life has kind of blurred things, but it's that comparison. And if I'm in a color family that is very demanding, like you say, Sandra, I have to know how to use it. It's not just picking the color, it's how to use it. And we'll be talking about that later in the month on our blog and on our social media. So here's a great example. All of these are orange. So we have a very bright orange, very clean, very vibrant. And then we have a more muted orange. So that orange is going to have some muddiness to it, a little bit of a dirty quality. And then, of course, we have the neutralized orange, which warm colors are going to tend to go to a brown family. But this is actually orange. So as you're looking at the screen, even if you're not an orange family, which way do you lean toward? What feels best for you? And then here we have the same thing in blues. We have that very bright, crisp, clean blue that is always going to look best with a cool white. And then we have our muted blue. It is always going to look best with a warm white. And then the neutralized also is going to look best with a warmer white. So when we talked the other day with my student who said, my friend uses two whites all the time. Well, if she's picked two cool whites that are her go-to whites, then she's going to be missing out
Mhm.
on multiple jobs if they are not in the bright family.
And that's one of those moments when you look at a room and go, okay, what is wrong? I mean, it's like you kind
Mhm.
of have to do a double take to figure out what it is, and it can be as simply picking the wrong white.
Absolutely. It's the nuances that are the difference between a room that has good bones but is missing it and a room that is truly well designed because you've looked at every detail. So let's talk about a few more problems and solutions.
Where do we start?
Where do we start? Yes. So accent walls. Accent walls can be very effective. Now, I just read an article the other day about trends, and they say accent walls are out. I think that gets said every single year that
I do
accent
too.
walls are out. But it isn't that accent walls are out. It is that people that don't know how to use accent walls effectively are out.
Exactly.
So in this case, the end wall um, just fights against the color on the side. So what they've done is on the end wall, they've used a diva red. They've used a bright, cool red with the yellow gold on the side walls that is more muted. So it not only is your eye going to be drawn to that end wall anyways, but those two color palettes compete with one another. Um, so that's mistake number one. Sandra.
Okay, I don't know whether, I mean, well, okay, let's give a one little credit. We've kind of brought the red around a little bit in the room. But even right here, notice the difference in this pot right here, this burgundy, which is, becoming more of that muted color. This is our bright. But it is truly narrows the room, Furniture placement has done nothing. We have not repeated the color, and it's got to be the right color you're repeating in the space. So the accent wall is the one that glares at us the most
Mhm.
because of it being the wrong color. But there's nothing to kind of, even if we got this color right, we would still have to make some other color decisions in this space for it to feel cohesive.
Right. And like you say, Sandra, when you look at the top drapery panel, you can see that the red needs to be earthier and more muted, as opposed to this demanding diva red, which I love. I love that
Mhm.
red, but it did not do a good job. Do do understand the other problem in a room if you're doing an accent wall, use a wall that makes sense. I've got into rooms like this that are a long bowling alley. An accent wall in a long bowling alley room is a good thing because it moves the wall forward, it advances it,
Mhm.
making the room feel a little more proportional. But I've seen people do that accent color on a back wall, on the long wall, and it doesn't make sense. Or in a bedroom, they'll put it on a wall that does not frame the bed or something. Your accent wall really should be the wall that when you walk into the room or you are in the room, that is the most dominant. And ideally should be framing something interesting like a fireplace, bookshelves, or whatever. I love this look. I absolutely love this look. It is so beautiful. Imagine how long it took to create that artistic wall. But they did it going up a staircase where we had, and if you could see the whole picture, there's a chandelier that has lots of lines. We have all these lines in the spindles. We have the lines in the molding. And so again, what happens is line, shape, and form are competing with the colors. Now let's talk first. All of these colors go together beautifully. Why? Because they are in color vibes or palettes that complement one another. There's not a diva color in there. These are all muted and neutralized, which complement one another. So you can see it isn't that anything gave this color inspiration, but they all work because they all have that level of um, uh, muted quality or muddiness to them. But again, all that work, and then we have all this distraction of these other elements. So we always tell people if you're looking at color or you're arranging a mantle or placing furniture, look to the right, look to the left, look up, and look down. What is surrounding it? People tend to create vignettes as opposed to an expansive space.
And even just the style factor, you feel so modern and then you get to the banister and it feels so traditional. We are just, I'm about to sneeze, sorry. We are changing right now with a client their whole banister set up and we're using some very simple but gorgeous black iron
Mhm.
to go up and it just is giving a whole new vibe to it, which now allows us to, well, now the next layered decision is what's going on the wall.
Mhm.
But yeah, it just makes such a huge difference. Even just painting that railing black would have helped.
Yes, I did the same thing with the client. They had very traditional colander or colonial spindles, and we changed them out and put in the metal um, spindles in there. And it was just a short railing. It wasn't a full stair, it was that 5 foot of railing. But what a transformation it made to that room. So again, here's a case where someone made a beautiful decision with this color story, but then they took it all away by putting it in an area where there was too much competition. But imagine this effect on a wall in a bedroom, in a family room, in a living room, where you could really appreciate that color story and
And
design.
elongate it. We just did one, and I will show it maybe this month. You'll have to look for it. Just that accent wall using 1x2s and creating a pattern. And because it had a little bit of a Southwest flair, we made the whole design keep that style. And it was
Mhm.
on the one accent wall that we needed to fill up and it needed to be a little dramatic. So we did it with the 1x2s. It actually is going to look really cool when we get painted.
And Sandra, a really good point I want to make for those of you that are on the call that do work with clients. So often I think we're afraid to suggest something to our client um, because we don't want to feel like we're pushing them. But drop those little nuggets in there, like my client with the railing and your client with the railing. I mean, this gentleman called me in for paint colors. And as we were there, he asked me a question and I said, are you allowing me to be open? Would you really like me to tell you what I would do in here to really update this home? And he said, well, yeah, shoot away. So then, we went from picking out paint colors to suggesting that he replace the flooring in his kitchen and taking out a peninsula that was in there and replacing it with an island and adding another cabinet, changing out backsplash, changing out the railing. And when we were all done, I mean, he said, I did a PowerPoint design board presentation for him, and he said that little PowerPoint has cost me $100,000. So, but it was
It helps them see it.
truly all things that needed done, and the house was in a price point that if he were to sell the house in the next few years, he was also going to get his money back. So don't be afraid to make a suggestion and say to the client, maybe you're not ready to do this now, but when your budget allows, this is something I want you to think about.
Well, in this accent, while I just was telling you about, was a rental for a rental. And then I love this client. It's same thing. Whatever you throw out, she will absorb it. So she sent me this, would have been a lot easier pre-cut, um, like very traditional look. And she said, can we do this? This will be a lot easier. I'm like, no, it doesn't go with our style. And her mother is so sweet. She goes, have you ever done this before? Have you ever done this pattern? I'm like, no, we are winging it. Because as much as that is honest, because I had done the concept before, but not this particular style because the space was different and we are going with a
Right,
bit more of the Southwest. It then kind of turned around to your advantage that you are giving them a one of a kind. You're
right.
you're thinking outside the box for them.
And again, you were able to explain why you were making this suggestion. So that gave you credibility
Exactly.
and gave the client confidence in what you were suggesting. Okay, this is a real common mistake where all the color, the pop of color, is used in the lower level of the room, what we call the function zone, 0 to 36 inches. And what happens is you have a new perceived ceiling line. So if my color stops at this level, my eye pretty much stops there too. So if you're staging, this is a real problem because you just lost 50% of the room. The eye is going to tend to sit low. This was the actual room. And so you can see here, they have brought the yellow up. So that brings the eye up. Now, proportion of this picture is wrong. You want to fill 2/3 of the anchor. So they should have had a horizontal picture or a pair of pictures to do that. But understand that if you're a stager, perhaps, or even in your own home, if your room is all done in neutrals and then you think, well, I'll add a little color by throwing a rug with some color and a few pillows on the sofa. If you don't walk the color up the room is going to feel squatty and not as large as it could be.
You got a little bit more square footage, but still you didn't go as much as you could.
Right, right. Okay, you want to talk about this one, Sandra?
Oh, please let me. It's like, in fact, when I first looked at this photo, I thought these are two rooms that just got pushed together. It like you honestly almost want to lean. You're going to lean one way or the other depending on what your preference is or your client's is. But this is the perfect example of having those competing colors in the space. It's like, yes, we have the Diva yellow cabinets, but it's almost making these gorgeous cabinets on the right feel dirty. I mean, it just doesn't work together. So
Mhm.
that's where you get the opportunity for your client to say, okay, let's marry these two rooms. And these are our ways to do it. Here's your option number one. We're going to make the right side be a little bit more intense and bright, or we're going to also make the other side, we need to mute it up a little bit, neutralize it, because
Mhm.
consequently, these rooms are like, if you walk in, you called me because you pretty much feel like something's wrong. So that's
Right.
where understanding those options we're talking about, the bright, the muted, the neutralized, is going to work in your favor for being able to describe it to the client. I mean, and when you really, I mean, let's say after you give the color test, if you know how to do that, you're going to probably find that let's say she likes the cabinetry on the right side. It's going to be a lot easier to fix the left. Yeah, you're going to have to paint those cabinets at the top or do something. But even, I don't know what this tablecloth is covering up, the whole thing. I mean, you got a lot of job security in this space.
You do. And I have to say, when we build a presentation, we use a lot of our own photos, and we also will use some AI photos to try to demonstrate a point. But some of them are photos that we find online, and I always hope that the person who owns this house does not see this and get insulted. It's like there are elements of this room that are really great, but they did not look at it as a whole. Again, this
Like
is
color.
vignette decorating. Yes, yes, yeah. Like you say, it's like there's split personalities living in this house. Here's another great example of dropping the ceiling lines. So the room is relatively neutral, and there's some pretty elements in it. I think the sofa looks very pretty, but if that piece above it would have just had some of this mustard color or something that would walk the color up the wall, or the greens, it doesn't have to be the same color. What it needs to be is more values, and values are up and down your paint strips. So if you've used a darker value low, you have to try to get that darker value in another color even up high, so that you've expanded the size of that room.
I also think that is a very easy sell. Clients
Uh-huh.
can see that. I mean, some ideas you throw out or some rules or guidelines, they're like, does that really matter? That one is one by the time, and if I can pick up something like JoAnne just did, let's say you don't have the color deck on you, you're there for another reason. But if you can pick up something around the room and kind
Uh-huh.
of even hold it, then they get that visual.
Right, right. Okay, so let's talk a little more about the Ys and color ratio and vertical and horizontal color balance. So here again, here's that idea of understanding the color ratios and using that 60-30-10 in this space, but flipping the way that you use that ratio and how it changes the overall effect of the a room. So the um, art, you can see even the art here, there's more blue in the art than there is here because the blue in the walls was dominant. So you didn't need a whole lot more. The other thing is looking at contrast when you're doing your color palettes. We talked again, and let me grab one of my color decks here.
While Joanne's doing that, this is a reason we use these photos for you to see and for your client to see, because you might show your client that the one on the left, that paint color, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know, that seems a little too harsh." But when you use it in an example and use some of your apps and our programs, you can give her the example, and she goes, "Gosh, it's not as overwhelming as I thought it might be."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So one of the things again that I want you to think about in here, we're talking about color ratio. One color always has to be the star. You're going to use more than half of it. Then you're going to have your secondary color, and then you're going to have your accent color. So you have the dominant color, the support color and the accent color. In the 90s, the early 2000s, the world did this thing where they would use the same value all the way across. So, and I liken that to singing a song with one note. When you create contrast, like you've seen here, so if you were looking at your color deck, it's like I'm going to use some up here, and then I'm going to use some down here as you mix and match your colors. That's just going to give the room interest and movement. The other thing that, let's look at that white wall, the room on the right. We always hear, paint the walls light and it'll make the room appear bigger. Well, it won't if everything you put in front of it is light, because what makes a wall feel like it's moving is contrast. So in this case, you can see the lamp, the vase, the flowers move towards us. Now, of course, they are further forward than the lamp is, but they feel even more because of that strong difference in value there. So again, when you're using contrast, is it going to create the look that you want it to create when you're done?
Great point. Oh.
This room, I thought, did a good job in some ways, but we're talking primarily about color here today. So I want you to see, this is exactly what we're talking about. Here we have these blues in the function zone, and the blue has been brought up into the power zone and the skyline zone. So the color has been walked up the wall. You appreciate the room in its entirety instead of a room that the color is only in the bottom. So I thought they did a great job of pulling that color up in the space. I also love the fact that that piece of art is really very contemporary. And yet when you look at some of the fabrics that were used, they're more traditional. So it makes it interesting that you're mixing and matching styles in there as well. But I think the color usage in this room was done very well.
Yeah, this is one of those ones because like JoAnne said, it's almost like it's the perfect V. They did such in that middle artwork.
That
Your eye
triangle,
just goes that great little triangle. I mean, if you're called because something feels a little bit off, I mean, we're going to probably, first thing we're going to say are these Roman shades. I mean, you almost would be a little bit better off without any, but getting a color that's even just, I don't know if you can see my cursor, like that neutral that's in the art. But by having that panel, I would say, okay, let's just consider this a minute. And that's where being able to do, whether it's a design board or actually changing it out for her to see it would give that opportunity. But they did a great job, I agree, of walking that blue up. I just, might look at those Roman shades a little bit.
Okay, the other thing that I want you to think about, if you are a little color shy and afraid of making a mistake, I want you to be inspired by Mother Nature. So when we go outside, unless you're at my house right now where everything is white on the ground, typically there's an anchor color. Think about the earth, the trees. We have those anchor colors of, again, the deep values, that towards the bottom of the strip. And then as it reaches up, we get that break of light. We see that great contrast of the sky, of the leaf color. And so when I looked at this grouping, I love that it kind of mimicked that. Here we have our anchor. We have that deeper wood floor. We have the color in the bench. But picture this as a tree. So as I go up, see how I still have my branches. I have my dark color, but I have that relief that the sky would give me and my different leaf colors.
That's such a good example.
Yeah, so this is using a deep value as an anchor in a room is going to be a foolproof way for you to build. Now, that doesn't mean you can't use a light floor. You absolutely can, but I'm just telling you, this is one approach to color that is always going to work effectively. If you think of it like the tree reaching up, because it'll bring the eye up and it creates interest. And notice here too, even the wood colors in the frame, nothing is linear, just like branches in a tree are not linear. This is moving and it creates a very interesting gallery wall.
Great.
Okay, we're coming to the end, but we have some surprises for you the rest of the month. It's color month at the DSA. So be watching our Instagram, be watching Facebook, watch our blog. And come next week, you'll see a link for our Color Made Easy ebook that takes an even deeper dive than we did today. We're going to be talking about the Battle of the Whites later in this month. We're going to be talking about where to put the color. That's a critical one, and understanding where your client's comfort level is with color is important for you. We're going to be talking more about color fixes and whatever else our little brain comes up with. Next month, our focus will be 2026 trends. Sandra is headed to Vegas on Sunday.
Yes,
To
yes.
the market. So she's going to be coming back and giving us a full report on what's in, what's out, what to be recommending to your clients or utilizing in your own home. So that will be fun. And then last of all, if you're ready to move from design driven or one of the other classifications
Style
into
seeker.
style seeker into style savvy, consider the confident color system. JoAnne, you spelled that wrong. How could I have done that? Confident color system right up here.
Oh, I'm looking
Uh,
at it. I'm like, no, that's okay. I have to tell you, this is a great moment for me because it's usually me that is the one misspelling something. So I am literally going to love this moment. Thank you, JoAnne.
my pleasure. I'm here to serve.
It's
Um,
always me.
but we're kicking off the year and adding a bonus to this color class. The color class fee is $9.97. We're adding a bonus. If you register by February 1st, you will get an additional 4 hour of live group coaching, a 30-minute one-on-one, and a set of color palettes that are pre-made.
You're
So
awesome,
it's a
yeah.
whole house color palette, and they will be broke down into both Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore colors. And if you loved what you've learned in the last 30 minutes, imagine what you'll be able to learn in our full-fledged certification class. Sandra, you want to wrap us up?
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, we are excited about this year. We have the whole year mapped out and as you can see, we're trying to give you guys a whole month of, snippets, education, dropping tips your way. So we appreciate you joining us and we look forward to a fun year.
Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Enjoy. We'd love to hear from you as well. So let us know what your thoughts are.